Welcome to another episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. My name is Stephen Clark and I'm joined by a co-host in the studio, Nick Ponty. Bringing you all the latest news, guys, keeping you up to date with the property market. So I'm delighted to welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast, Davy Hutton. How are you today, Davy?
I am tip-top, tiddly-bop, thanks, Nick.
Fantastic. Brilliant. We've got Stephen Clark here as well.
It's funny we finally got Davy Hutton on the podcast, because when we first started the podcast, Davy was the name that popped up of the guests we want to have on board. But because we went into lockdown and Davy fucking hates Zoom as much as we do.
I've heard that. You were the first name we thought of, but we had 112 people in before you.
No, because you wouldn't do Zoom.
But I tell you what, Davey, I've just shown you a picture here, right, from 2010. Now, for the listeners, I used to work for the Evening Times newspaper as a photographer, and part of our job was to go out into Buchanan Street. So I would go as a photographer with a reporter, and we used to have to stop 10 people in the street that kind of looked a wee bit, well, it's just called Style in the Streets. That was the name of the page. So anybody had a bit of style, looked a wee bit different maybe, then we would pick them out. So I saw Davy for the first time walking up Buchanan Street in 2010 here, and I says, we got to stop him, stop this guy here. Luckily he did stop, we had a wee chat with him, and I got a picture here, Davy. I'm going to show you this picture, right, because you can buy it for £9.95 if you want on the website. I think it's actually, is that the same?
It's the same coat.
The same coat, right? So we're 2023, that was 13 years ago.
So 13 years ago you had a thing for Davy Hutton, you're finally got him on your podcast.
Exactly. So
I like the way you say that it was the most stylish people. What did you say when you get back to the office, like behind the scenes? Wait, you see this, Nick?
Wait to see this guy. We're all piling around the computer. Oh, aye, look at him. He's something else. So basically my first question is, why do you dress like that? Like...
Well, I don't know what I dress like. You know, I dress like me. I've always worked for myself, which makes a difference. So you're never following any kind of corporate image, or nobody's telling you to wear. You don't need to wear a tie and whatnot. And for a wee while, when I started in the property, you think I better try and be an estate agent, but I wasn't very good at looking like an estate agent. Nor did I want to look like an estate agent. But I guess you just get a bit more freedom to do what you want and what you're comfortable in. And it's not like I suppose it is vanity, but it's not. How would I explain it? I'm the guy that will drive home 20 miles because I've got the wrong shoes on, and you would never know, but I don't feel right in them. And until I feel right, I don't feel like me, if that makes sense. If I'm kind of awkward or I'm pulling on a shirt collar or something.
Do you feel comfortable getting, because obviously the way you dress is a little bit kind of like different, right? So I mean, like you say, you dress how you feel comfortable, right? But like we would look at you, and like I looked at you in the street there and said, oh, he's a little bit different, unusual. Do you feel eyes on you? Do you feel like you're getting attention from being a little bit different like that?
No, but anybody who walks generally along the street with me will be aware of it, and they'll say to me, I think a lot of it is how you do it as well. If you're dressed up in a costume, you're a little bit peacocky and kind of showing off a little bit. If it's just the way you dress,
it's just you.
I guess you're just confident with it. And you know, sometimes you see somebody in the street, a guy with dreadlocks, whatever, and you think he's cool. But if you went out with with that look on, you would feel awkward. You need to put on a show and a bit of a performance and everything. So, no, I'm not aware of people looking.
But you're aware of some of the comments you get, because you've said in the past, like you do get some, like it must be either through social media or people just coming up to you, like people have called you like, why do you look like a pirate and all the rest of it? Like,
I was on a train coming back from the rugby at the weekend, last weekend, and it was the last train out of Glasgow, and for whatever happened, like one of the trains were off for maintenance or something, so we're going to Paisley. And there's a group of middle-aged women come and sit down beside me, all steaming, all cackling, and one of them starts off with, "What are you?" I'm like, "What am I? Oh, what are you?" I said, "I don't know what that means." I was at the rugby, I've got my tartan on and my kilt on and everything. "What do you mean, what are you? Where are you going?" I said, "Paisley." She's like, "Paisley will eat you. You'll get killed in Paisley." Great. And then it ends up with, "Do you want to come to a party with?" I mean, it's certainly a look is always a conversation starter. But from a business point of view, I've always kind of believed that you can look however you want as long as you talk credibly. Mm-hmm. And if you dress oddly or, with an eccentric flavour that maybe I have, if you talk credibly, that credibility becomes almost magnified because of the way you look. But it is really important to be aware that if you talk a lot of shit, you're an arse. It magnifies the other way as well. If you don't know what you're talking about, then you become that idiot that,
And was there a bit of you, like, obviously starting out in business and all this, that thought, oh, wait, if I just kind of stand out from the crowd here a wee bit, like, I can build a brand, like my own brand. Like, obviously Davy Hutton, the brand, the quick sale sold and all that has become like a brand, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So... Was that kind of tactical, or was it just like you're literally just dressing how you feel you're comfortable?
I guess honestly, I was always aware that the businesses I did, that they tended to be personality-based businesses. They were based round about me, and it's not an ego thing of wanting to go out there shouting "quick sale sold." We did that because the advert that we started off doing, the kind of more anonymous type one, didn't work, and then you revert to your strengths. I know that I can front something, for want of a better expression. If I was playing a band, I'm going to be the front man. I'm not going to be the bass guitarist. I don't really have the core skills, but I know how to be visible. Mm-hmm. It's not something. It wasn't a conscious decision that I made to try and be visible. I just was visible. I was just a big guy. I had long hair. I was a rugby player. I was a big boy. People knew you were there, really. And I was never a good looking boy coming through school. So I mean, obviously I'm a good looking boy now.
Touching on that kind of upbringing, then give us a wee bit of insight into obviously you growing up as a kid. Like what was your education
because I was
like?
A good looking boy, that's why I had to develop this patter and this personality, and that's where. Boys like you, Nick, that were pretty at school, you never had to develop the personality. And now your looks are leaving you, you can end up left with nothing. You no looks, no pattern. But I was boy for Lochwinnock who went to Johnson High School. And it was a bit of a culture shock because Lochwinnock was the kind of prime of Miss Jean Brodie school. And then secondary school came off, we went to Johnson. It was a big adventure.
How did you fit in at secondary school then?
Well, our secondary
girls, obviously.
Our secondary school was rough. Johnson was rough at that time. When I was in second year at school, they banned the belt and the whole thing went to hell in a handcart. But we were the kids coming off the bus for Lochwinnock with Star Wars backpacks and pencil cases and packed lunches and things, and just wee innocent kids. And we got to Johnson and into first year and came some of the kids for Johnson Castle with fingers missing and Stanley knives and things like that. It was a real culture shock back at that time. It was kind of the age of glue and everything. We used to go down to the chip shop in the Howwood Road, and I'd walk down with two guys, and we'd be best pals on the way down. I'd go and get my chips. They'd go sniff their glue, and then they'd chase me back up to school and threaten to kill me every day. Kind of thing. That was my school life. And really, all that happened was that you wanted to be not noticed. Mm-hmm. So that was the kind of the years of my life where you did try and blend in. You didn't want to really pass the exams because you get a kicking for being clever. All you wanted to be. In fact, it was cooler to fail all your exams and be good at football than to pass your.
I'm sure every male in Scotland can relate to that.
Yeah, so you like everybody else, you go through the stage in your life where you don't want to. No teenager really wants to stand out. Mine kind of changed where I knew that I could stand out. I had a friend that gave up his job and decided to become a full-time musician, and he spent a year sequencing music before music sequencing was a thing. So he'd play the guitar and record the guitar and play the drums and record the drums and had to play all the instruments. But he was nervous of the singing part. Because he lived next door to me, I'd always messed about with him and helped him with stuff and learned as I went. And I said, why don't I come out and do the front bit for him. We'll share the embarrassment. You know, that kind of way, if there's two of you, it's fun to be, but if you're doing it your own, it's mortifying. So I get into doing that with him. What was that? The Rendezvous in Lark Hall was our first gig. And I remember playing the carpet in the corner of a room, and Stevie's second name was Donegan, Irish Catholic descent, and this was in Lark Hall, and the guys came off the walk with the white gloves on the shoulders and all that kind of thing, you know. God. But I very quickly learned that I could switch personalities into that outgoing front. I could slag people with a mic. I could make them laugh. I could get them on side. If you
started developing your confidence.
Pretty much. Well, not even so much my confidence, but the ability to switch into that caricature of yourself. And then over a 30-year period, the caricature that you've chosen kind of becomes you, at least in part. But by nature, I'm not the person that people think I am. I'm quite quiet. I'm quite shy in a lot of respects. I mean, I could, like, lockdown suited me to a T. I'd be a great hermit. I don't really need people. I don't need attention. And I know, you know, people tend to look at me and think you're attention seeking. It's almost the exact opposite. I used to have long hair, owned a pub in Howwood. And I remember the first time I wore a bandana. And I wore it because Hulk Hogan wore a red bandana and he'd the blonde hair. And I had long blonde hair. And I was aware when we bought the pub that because it was quite outlying, it was one of these places that you needed lots of people to come once or twice a year. Like the kind of...
That Howard, was it?
Yeah. Like kind of Drovers and, you know, these kind of places. So it was about being visible. But I remember walking down Johnson Main Street with a bandana on for the first time and thinking everybody's looking at me. And I was so aware of it because it was the first time I'd done it. And then a couple of years later, I was walking down Johnson Main Street and I had nothing on my head. By that time, my hair had been shaved off and I was bald. And I thought everybody was looking at me because I didn't have a bandana on. Because I didn't feel comfortable. And it's because you don't feel comfortable, you're kind of nervous a wee bit and aware much more. When you're comfortable, you're not really aware of an awful lot. You're just comfortable in your own skin. And if you're comfortable in your own skin, people pick up on it. And then you're not a drag queen or a, you know, out in an outfit or a stag or whatever. You know, you've just got your own look. And I think probably secretly most people kind of want to have their identity. Their own. We're all born individuals, but society, you know, you go to school and it moulds you into a shape. You go to the boys' brigade and it moulds you into you know, you leave school, you join a corporate and it moulds you into what society wants you to be.
I remember one of the first times I think I met you, David, was through a Glasgow property event, and it was the usual, like you thought, well, I'm going to go full time in my property business. I need to be dressed in a fucking blazer and a shirt and stuff, and it just wasn't me. Wore it for about a year and a half, 2 years. Fuck this, like t-shirts and ripped jeans and whatever you feel comfortable in. Because
but I think that, you know, when you're starting something new, you don't really think you know what you're talking about.
Aye.
You probably do know what you're talking about, but you've not yet developed your spiel and things that you say every day. And
with conviction. Aye.
Exactly. Once you do that, you really can wear whatever you want. People are more comfortable.
Aye. Well, talking about starting out, what was your route then out of high school and then into work or business?
Well, I left school in the middle of the miners' strike in 16. No qualifications. And all you wanted to do was get a job. That was the limit of your ambition. Get a job. If you could get a trade, that was you set for life, kind of thing. That was the times. And
what do your parents do?
My dad started off as a farm labourer, and then he started his own business, basically repairing, you know, the PVC sides on big 40-foot trailers and things like that. If they get ripped, he repaired them. So he started his business when I was about 14. It's quite interesting because we were skint. We were proper skint. We lived in a flat above a blacksmith's. It was a dirt floor down the bottom and everything. And it created something with me. It created a fear.
A fear of being skint?
Yeah. Now, I'm 7 years older than my young brother. I'm 3 years older than my young sister. And you can see the stages. Like, my dad's business would start to do okay, so my sister doesn't worry and save as much as I do. My brother doesn't worry at all or save at all, and is quite comfortable spending what he earns because everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Just a casual confidence that, kids nowadays tend to have that casual confidence. They believe that if they go out and get a job, the first thing I should do is go and get my new Audi. And they don't think that they're 2 paychecks from disaster. Because for 20 years, more than that, we've not really had that situation. We're heading back into it now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, awakenings going to have to happen. I've got the same problem with my son, 17 next week, and everything's been good for him. And I can say to him, we could lose everything tomorrow. I remember saying to him when COVID started, and I was worried that the banks were going to crash and, buying gold and things like that. I said, everything could change tomorrow. We could lose everything. Look at the, folk coming for Ukraine and whatnot, Syria. The lives were going on perfectly well. Then all of a sudden it changes.
A couple of years ago, they weren't expecting to be in that situation.
And I can tell him these things, and he can understand them, and he can nod wisely when I tell him, but he can't feel it.
No.
Can't feel what being skint.
He'll go back out with his pals and they'll go for a Nando's and they'll go and spend their money they've got.
Well, it's a bit like we can sit here and we can talk about how awful the slave trade was, and we can all understand how awful it was, but you can't feel it because it's not in your history. It's not in your. And I remember the girl who runs our charity, Find Your Feet, is Jewish, and not practicing Jewish. You just if you're born to a Jewish mother, you're Jewish. That's just the way it works. And I've got a number tattooed on my arm here, 19880, and it belonged to a girl called Mala Zimmerbum who died in Auschwitz. So I was fairly well versed in the Holocaust, and it's just something I've studied all my life. It kind of fascinated me and appalled me in equal measure. But the idea, years ago, I was doing some television stuff, and I had this idea that if 6 million people adopted one person that died in the Holocaust, nobody dies unremembered, if you like, because, families died, streets died, villages died, towns died, counties died, everybody died. There was nobody there to remember people going forward. So in a casual conversation, I'd said to her, I kind of believe now, at this stage of my life, and I know a degree of certainty that if bad stuff happened, like happened in 1930s Germany, I'm fairly sure I would be the guy that would stand up and say, no, not in my name. And she said to me, there's your white privilege right there. I said, what do you mean? She said, you're a German, you're not a Jew. And she was dead right. There is nothing in my psyche that says somebody's going to come and put me in the back of a lorry and take me away. So that, there's a fundamental difference in the way that, us as middle-class white boys would talk to a policeman. If a policeman did something to you that you thought was wrong, you wouldn't think anything about telling him. But if you're black, would you? Because you're brought up with just a different view, and it was really interesting because it made me go away and think.
Did that force you to want to become a success or do something more with life than just a job that could?
I think I've always been a thinker. I've always been. I'm not the brightest spark, but I've always kind of wanted to develop myself. So I went to play in bands when I was younger, and then once I realised I could do it, that was me almost done with it. The problem is that you're booked for 2 years after that from the point that you decide that you don't want to do it anymore. So you develop a little bit of a resentment getting out it. By the time you get out it, it's work. It's no longer
fun
and longer play. When I was doing the pub, I did the pub for 7 years. The first 3 years of it was entirely about people coming into the bar and looking directly behind the bar because we put a show on behind the bar. We were kind of coyote ugly, throwing bottles about and all that kind of stuff.
Was that your first business then, the pub?
No. They all kind of run simultaneously. Never big businesses.
Just try to go through a timeline then, just so we can...
Well, I went to serve a trade, or to start being a panel beater is what it started as. But I couldn't put a nut in a starving monkey's mouth, and I knew it. I didn't want to do it, really. I had no interest in it.
Just the I think it was just the prospect of having a job and having some security.
Yeah, exactly. Then I got a job in the office, and I was good at that. I was good with numbers. I was good with, my English skills were good. My arithmetic skills were good. And this was at a time where you calculated wages by using tables and mental arithmetic, and I could tally things up in my head. I just had a kind of bent for that kind of thing, and I enjoyed it. So while I was doing that, my pal's mum and dad had died when he was 21 and left him a wee bit of money that he bought flats with. It's not a huge amount of money, but when you're 21 or 22, having kind of half a dozen flats is a big deal. So he'd done the donkey work of learning how you bought a flat and how you rented it out and how you do it up to rent it out. And it seemed daft not to follow him.
Did you get involved in that, doing them up? Like, did you help him out or anything like that? Or
no.
Did you just
he wouldn't have had me help him out. I was rubbish at it. He was my best mate, and I knew what he was doing. And
it was working for him.
I could see that the numbers worked. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't have known how to approach an estate agent. I wouldn't have known how to, what rental yield was.
So that was the first moment where kind of property became a bit of interesting.
Well, I bought a flat in Paisley, 33 grand I paid for it. It was a 3-bedroom flat in St James Street. And I rented it out for 450 quid a month. This is back in 1992 or something like that.
Back then, wasn't it?
Well, it never changed for about 25 years.
That's what we're saying. This is the rent. You're complaining about the rents going up that much. I'm saying they've not changed much in 20 years.
Well, I bought it for 33 grand. I kept it for the guts of 10 years. Sold it for 95 grand just as the market crashed. That flat now is probably 70 grand.
So worth less
back down
than what it was at the
absolutely,
peak, what you sold it for.
Because at that time, nobody believed the property market could crash. Therefore, you could have bought anything because you knew everything was going to go up. And then the reality dawned when it crashed that this is not the case anymore. And it's funny, we constantly get caught out by it. The older you get, the kind of wiser you get to it. But the young generation coming through just now see what happened post-pandemic and think the market always goes up like that. Now, that the 10 years previous to that, nothing happened, and the 3 years before that was rank rotten.
So did you start building a portfolio back then? Did you get numerous?
I never really thought about
properties?
it. No, I never thought about it like that. I had £13,000 that I'd saved, bought it for 33, mortgaged 20 grand. And because I was earning, I had a job elsewhere. I didn't need the money from the rental stuff, so I took a 7-year mortgage and paid the thing off over 7 years. Because all I ever wanted was security. It was a fear of the future. It was a fear of ending up with nothing. And that's really what everything's been, that's what drives me. I've never had contentment. And you think, if I can just get that flat paid off, I'll be content. And you realise you're not.
There's another one.
So you need to move to the next level. And you're not content. And then you do something else and you're not content. And then there comes a point in your life when you say, do you know what, Davy, you're never going to be content. It's not the way you're built. And if you are content, that's when you really should start to worry, because you're done.
You're not moving forward.
Yeah.
Grateful for what you've got, but still want to pursue something else.
There comes a point as well where you're no longer so worried about being skint. I mean, I'm not going to starve. I don't have debt. I've always had kind of fear of debt. I've used it, debt when I needed it. But I've always wanted rid of it as quickly as I could, which is maybe not the best way for making money, but it's the safest way.
That's an interesting point.
It reminds me the conversations I had with my dad growing up, because I must have been similar ages to you when my dad first got on the property ladder, and he moved us away from a right rough area and in the countryside. And I remember it being that age and being quite impressionable. He just got a job offshore and started making good money. I can afford a mortgage, and we moved out of that rough area. Then the first trip back from Thailand, we had a major car crash where he smashed his femur. And I remember having this same fear, because for 6-7 years he couldn't go offshore and couldn't work, and we were fucking skint. And when you look back and you think about these memories, it was things like, I remember when we got Kellogg's back in the house, eating cereal, and it wasn't your
own brand.
Quick Save flipping shitey brand, 9p for a box of cardboard cornflakes. Like, it was like, wow.
The way you said quick save shitey brand, there's a wee bit like quick sale.
That's close.
Remember that
You
shop?
said quick save and I shouted, so!
Automatically. And I remember that kind of that fear as well, and then try to make that safety. But my dad had the exact opposite thing, because he would be the fear of the debt. Whereas when I started the portfolio, I was like, no, the debt means that I'm building equity. The debt means that I'm building wealth that it's hopefully going to protect me when I pay these off. But
Well, it does. But it also makes it easier to lose.
So is there good debt and bad debt then? You hear a lot of this good debt and bad debt.
No,
Is there any good debt?
Well, yeah, there's always good debt. I mean, you'd have been daft not to borrow the last
Exactly.
10
Free money.
years. Exactly. But you know, if you're working on, if you go back to the crash of 2007, the world was operating on a business model that you put 30% down on the property, you borrowed 70%. And if you had 100 properties, you had a net worth of 3 million quid. And then the market drops 30% and your 3 million quid's just gone to zero. Not only that, but your banks then come back and say, we loaned you 70% of the value of that property. Our loan is now 100% of the value of that property. You've now breached your covenants. We want another 30% off you, or we're repossessing you. And that's when people learn the really hard
What
lesson.
are your memories of that time? Have you got any scars to show or can share with us? Or because of your outlook on debt, were you all
that's
right?
really where we started quick sale from, because a lot of estate agents get found out at that point. You couldn't get mortgages, properties were difficult to sell, and all of a sudden you needed to know about rental yields and you know how to create a deposit and things like how to get loans when they weren't easy to come by. And regular estate agents didn't know how to do that, because typically, without being overly offensive to the whole industry, it tends to be the pretty girl picked to look good in the shop window that tends to be good with clients that doesn't actually know an awful lot about
selling a house,
the nuts and bolts of property.
So things were just sitting on the market.
Yeah.
Nothing was happening. They weren't getting sold.
Did you see telltale signs back then? Because I mean, I'm really interested, as obviously as we go into this period right now. In 2007, did you see what was coming? Did you prepare for it with your own portfolio and the stuff? Did you sell any off?
I remember sitting in the David Lloyd Club with a guy that I met for a coffee just by accident, and he was in property, and he said, "What do you think is going to happen?" I said, "The market's going to drop to 30%. Now, I wasn't deeply into the property market at that time. I was just interested in economics, and I kind of followed the news junkie. So you saw the kind of subprime thing starting in America, and when they were talking about the subprime and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all that stuff, if you remember at the time, nobody that didn't have an interest in property watched that. But it was almost like the COVID thing. You could see it coming across the world. You knew if it was the number one story in America, it was going to be the number one story here tomorrow. Excuse me. So it was easy enough to kind of predict. And when I told him why I thought it was going to drop by 30%, I watched the colour drain out his face, because he was the guy that had the portfolio based on that model.
Highly leveraged.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember buying something in my second property. I refinanced my first one, and I bought my second one in April 2008. And when I speak to people that were obviously investing or more aware or weren't as ignorant then, they fucking saw it. And I'm sitting there going, why did I not see that coming? I leveraged myself to bits, and it took me years to get myself out at 21, 22 to try and get out. And so I'm interested when I speak to people that were active in that area to go, well, what was the telltale signs?
Greed had a lot to play with it as well, because like if you just don't start asking questions, if things are going so great and people are throwing money at you and mortgages, same day remortgages and all that stuff.
It's easy to be, or to paint yourself as being smart. As I said earlier, I'm not the sharpest tool in the box. I'm careful. But I grew up, my experience running against yours 20 years apart, really, it was a different world. They were throwing money at me at that time. They were throwing money at
even if you didn't have a job, you could get a mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, I bought a castle in West Kilbride. I've still got it. It was an old 14th century castle that was getting repossessed, and it was 340 grand for this ruined castle. And I didn't have a bean. I just said I was good for it. And they said, well, that's kind of good enough for us.
That's it. That's the checks.
Yeah.
Sign.
Now, that was probably, 2004, 2003, something like that. 4 years later, everything changed.
Did they call on that debt?
No, just with the market crashing and
the regulation.
Yeah. Now, I had a 340 grand interest-only mortgage that I didn't know how I was going to pay. But I knew that if I could get it in a rental condition within a year, the open was coming to Troon the following year. I knew it was coming to Turnberry 2 years after that. So I was thinking that way. I was also thinking they'd build a load of new houses in West Kilbride, and they were in the 300 grands. And if, a 4-bedroom house was 300 grand,
You've got a castle.
I've got a 7-bedroom 14th century castle. And
you've still got that today. That's great.
Yeah, and I'm a great believer in the same ships of opportunity pass by all of us. Mm-hmm. You choose whether to go on them or whether you don't. Quite often when you're self-employed, it's much easier to get on the ships because you've got nothing to gamble. If you've got a job paying you 40, 50 grand a year, it's quite difficult to say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore and I'm going to go and give that up and I'm going to do that. You're kind of almost a prisoner. Mm-hmm. Because I never really worked for anybody, I always had that thing of, like, how am I going to earn money next week? So you were scavenging a bit. You kind of looked for the opportunities, and you become a very good risk assessor. I'm not a risk taker, but I'm a very good risk assessor. So it was always like, what's the worst case scenario here? If I've got to sell that place on again, can I make money on it? And I believed that I could. But because when I grew up as a kid, there was an old ruined castle in Lochwinnock we used to play in as kids. And it was owned by the clan chief of the McDowell clan, and he lived in Canada. Professor McDowell, his name was. And I remember writing to him, aged 18, saying, we used to play in that old castle and it's falling to bits now. Going to sell it to me and I'll do it up and make it lovely.
Is this a handwritten letter posted?
Exactly, yeah. Sent it to Canada. And folk will laugh at that now, like a handwritten letter. That was the only way
I was about to say, you don't know anything else.
Right.
So I wrote the letter, and then ages later I got a message back and it said, hi Davy, thanks for your letter. No. So I used to kind of tell that story a bit, because I felt with the naivety of youth that if you could build a Barrett box for 40 grand at that time, how can you restore a castle for 40 grand? Now, age and wisdom now tells you it's £1 million project or a £2 million project, but you don't know that.
What's the reality of owning a castle? And was it like, did it suck up your money maintenance wise? Like, has it been relatively, like, how have you made it into a commercial?
Yeah, we rent it out to
Airbnb
Americans and Japanese, and it tends to be more through kind of agents, like week-long stays, long weekends, big family events and things like that, because it is very Blackadder. It's very kind of rip the leg off a chicken. It's self-catering. It's it's got the big aga and the Great Hall kind of thing, and it's the kind of place that guys come and do things that they've never done in their life before, like bake bread and roast venison and things like that. It's a pretty cool place. It'd be a difficult place to live out of all the time, because a big turnpike staircase, and it's got all the cool things. If you imagine a castle that a kid would paint, that's what it looks like.
This is Law Castle, is it?
Law Castle, yeah.
Aye.
Does it cost quite a lot on maintenance and upkeep now then, or is it just a regular thing?
Well, it's one of these places that once you get it right, the walls are 6 feet thick.
Yeah.
The roof exists behind turrets. It's relatively protected. It's stood there for 800 years for a reason.
EPC
I was going to say the EPC rating is not going to be for this.
Well, it's one of these things that when the heat's in it, it doesn't go anywhere.
Aye.
Similarly, when the cold's in it, it doesn't go anywhere.
Cold in the winter, roast in the summer.
So what we want to do, get an idea. What? Obviously, we know you're an estate agent, right? But not like a stereotypical estate agent, and we'll talk about quick sale and all that. But what else have you done within property? Then, obviously, you had that flat in Paisley. You made decent money on. What other things have you done within property? Have you done any development or?
Well, the pub that I did the Howard in was a property development. It was a building on its knees, listed building, one of these kind of old coaching inns where you could get a drink on a Sunday, because that's where the stagecoaches stopped, kind of thing. And it was falling to bits, and the business was on its knees, and I bought it as a property development, and then discovered that it was a listed building, and it wasn't. I knew it was a listed building, but I didn't know it was a listed building as a pub.
Right.
Which meant you couldn't make it into flats or a house or anything. It had to stay as a pub. And I remember thinking, this will be fun. And opening, I'd never poured a pint in my life till that opening night. But it was mobbed. And coincidentally, when we bought that pub, there was big property developments going on in Howwood, new housing estates getting built there. So nobody in this tiny wee village that became quite a big village knew each other. And the pub, an accident of timing, became like the
community hub sort
exactly,
of thing.
the social centre kind of thing.
Great.
And by the end of that first night, I could pour a pint with my left foot, kind of thing. It really, you learn quickly.
Well, you'd have to.
Did you end up spending did you have to be quite hands on with that business once it was up and running to get it?
I've always kind of done two jobs. So whenever I was selling trucks for a while. While I was selling trucks, I was doing the property thing. Then I bought the pub, so I was doing the trucks and the couple of properties and the pub. Then I stopped selling the trucks. Then we bought the castle, so I was doing the property stuff, and I was doing the castle, and I was doing the pub. I've always enjoyed working, but then I've always worked at things that I wanted to do.
Something you enjoy doing, yeah.
Yeah, a guy came into the pub one day, having listened to me tell that story about the castle in Lochwinnock. And he'd a rolled up Observer newspaper, and he said, "There's a castle." And I looked at it, and that's what I mean by the ships of opportunity going passive. I looked at it, and I thought, going to buy a castle. I was never actually going to buy a castle, but do you know what? See, for a laugh, let's go and have a look at it. And that's the step
That's how
that it
came
takes.
about. That's interesting.
Because most people wouldn't look at that because it's called a castle. If it's called an old house, you would look at it. Mm-hmm. But it is just an old house. But there is this thing that said, well, I don't know anything about castles. Sometimes it's the best way.
Bit of excitement. If you knew too much about it, you probably wouldn't fucking do it.
Yeah, and it branches into at that point. I was quite savvy in what I wanted to do to make money, but I was also having right good fun. The pub stuff opened up into all sorts of kind of like media stuff and opportunities and visibility. And
you must have become quite well known within the community when you've got a pub, don't you? Obviously.
Yeah, but in a different way to what it is now. I mean, we bought the pub in 1999, and I remember like a year later, somebody sitting at the bar sending a text. I'd never seen somebody send a text before. I didn't know what it was. And thinking, why would anybody possibly want to talk by text when you can just phone them? It was a wee bit when the first Starbucks came in, or the first drive-through coffee shop. Folk are going to pay for a coffee. Coffee stuff that you get for nothing, when you go to visit somebody.
Especially when you go to Morrison's.
Yeah, tell them that. It's not on the radio now.
So how did Quick Sale come about then? Was it prompted by the opportunity again of the...
Yeah, but it came post-crash of 2007.
Did you do all right at Howwood? Because you sold that eventually, right?
Yeah, we did great there. We got out at the right time, and it's important to realise what your shelf life is as well. The first 3 years of it were great. They were fun. And then you start to think, like, this whole thing is based round about me. How can you sell something that's based round about yourself? So we had to change the emphasis of the pub round. Wherever they used to look behind the bar, we turned it into a music pub. So the stage was at the other side. So all of a sudden people were looking away from you and towards the live music. And you had all sorts of big acts in there, with Chaz and Dave and the Dubliners and all that kind of thing, all playing in there. Sold it just after the smoking ban came in, which proved to be the right time.
Yeah.
But again, like the music thing before it, I knew before that it was work. It was no longer a hobby, it was work, and then it's like your exit plan to get out. And I look back over my career and think, see, if I could just have stuck at what I did, I probably made a whole lot more money.
Like, what if you went on to buy another pub or another stay in that sector, in that industry?
I tend to do things up until I know I can do them as well as I can do them.
Do you think get bored or?
it's like a self-destruct thing almost. It's like, right, I'm really
What a
good. I'm
new
really good at
challenge.
this now.
Aye.
I'll go and do something I know
someone else.
nothing about, which sounds kind of gallous and carefree, which is like totally contradictory to the story I'm telling you about the worried kid inside. I don't know what it is, but the lockdown happened, and I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to get myself through this? And I thought, I'll learn to play the guitar. I've always wanted, just before lockdown, that's how it came about. I was sitting talking to somebody, and quite often people that I see selling their houses is like massively nerve-wracking. And they think in a lot of cases that they've got lots of problems that I know they don't have. So you can go in there and you can calm it all down just because of the knowledge that you carry, because I do it every day of the week. What's a big deal to them actually isn't a big deal. So I was saying to this lady that right, you've got no money just now, you're skint, but you don't owe any money in your property. So you sell that property, you've now got 100 grand sitting in the bank. Now tell me what it is you want to do. What do you want to do with your life? Because you're going to go put your cash line machine in, it's going to say £100,000. Whereas right now it says no pounds, and you think you're a pauper, but you're not a pauper. But you can't take a brick for your house to Tesco to pay for your messages. But you can go rent anywhere you want. You've got enough money there to see you through. So tell me now what it is you want to do with your life. What's your ambitions? And 99 times out of 100 people will say, I don't know. Because you've gone to work to earn the money, to pay the mortgage, to bring the kids up, and you've forgotten how to dream. And by the time it comes round again, when the kids leave, and you don't know what it is. And also, as you go through adulthood, you tend to do the things you set out to do. You meet the bird, you buy the car, you go on the holiday. Tick, tick, tick. Once you've done all these things, what is it you want to do now? And it becomes more difficult because you've got to actually sit and really think, what is it I want to do? Do I want to help an old lady across the road? Do I want, what's going to make me smile? Do I want to learn Spanish? A guy I know just now, he's 71, John Sparks, and he's learning French. And I'm like, what, are you thinking of moving to France? No. You can go to France for your holiday? No, I said, I just always fancied learning French. And I thought, it's brilliant to go and do something that's just a skill.
Sure, that's got to keep your mindset always evolving, always changing, always passionate about doing something. Because if you're getting up and doing the same thing every fucking day and you don't enjoy it, surely it's just going to become...
Yeah. So in this conversation just before lockdown, I'd said to the lady, what is it you want to do? For instance, when I was young, I wanted to learn to play the guitar, and I've never done it. And I'm too old to do it now. And what would I be then, 52? As I said it, I stopped myself because, it's like, what would I say to you if you said that to me?
Excuse.
It's an excuse. And I remember saying, my son, Huckleberry Hutton, there's her name.
Great name.
That's a great name.
If Huck wanted to learn to play the guitar, just now he's 14, he'll be able to play it by the time he's 15. If I want to learn to play the guitar and I'm 52, I'll be able to play it by the time I'm 53 if I decide that that's what I want to do. But as we get older, we tend to view the importance of things based on will they make me money. So you see it with, can I get away with not doing it? That's why old folk can't work the telecontrols or the internet, because they know they can see their lives through without ever having to do it. If you're of an age where you need to learn about internet banking and all of that kind of stuff, you do it. If you can get away with it doing it, you do. So anyway, a week later, the lockdown happened. And I'd seen it coming from like maybe a month before. You saw it coming from, I remember thinking when they built that hospital in 8 days in China, they don't do that for no reason. Because of what happened to my sister, for those that don't know, my sister contracted sepsis about 11 years ago.
Corinne?
Corinne, yeah.
Corinne.
Cor. And she was effectively dead. She had a cold that she coughed up a little bit of blood in the middle of the night. Tiny trace of blood. But what that did was give a lesion in her lung. Another virus unconnected came along, which was streptococcus that we've all got, strep throat. Got into her bloodstream. Instant sepsis, and was in a coma the next morning. So she went from being super healthy to in a coma. So much, she was so badly going, they asked for her organs. And then I'd gone to get our best pal to come and say cheerio to her. And I'd phoned everybody I knew, everybody in my phone that might know somebody, that might know somebody, that might know somebody. This was on a Saturday. Got her pal, brought her back, and as I walked through the door, the nurse on duty said, ECMO and Leicester are coming for her. And what ECMO is it's a kind of experimental treatment where they take all the blood out your body, give you artificial blood to keep your organs going, while they clean your blood and then put it back in. And the reason that this place existed was for an oncoming pandemic that they knew was overdue. And they thought it was going to be H1N1, swine flu, bird flu kind of thing. So that was where they thought it was coming from. So I'll finish that story very quickly. My sister didn't die, but she lost her hands and feet, and now runs Find Your Feet charity, Paisley. But when the story started in China, I guess my radar was on it probably more than most. So I saw it and I watched it creep. Well, creep's the wrong word because it raced across the world very quickly because of the way that we travel now. You'll remember the Italian stuff happening and locking down the north of Italy and things like that. But still, we didn't think it was going to touch us. It's kind of pretend if it's
not on our doorstep.
Exactly. So anyway, the lockdown happened, and I decided I would learn to play the guitar, and I would write songs. And I knew I was good with words. I could write, and sometimes I've got to write to empty my head. It's just like emptying your teacup a wee bit, giving your capacity back when there's too much stuff going on. And I mean, I could play a chord just enough to think, well, I'll write it on that, the most basic of stuff, but it was just something that I wanted to do. Then I met a guy John Sparks that I mentioned earlier, he was a music producer. By that time I'd learned three chords. Three chords, you can do anything. So I never bothered learning the fourth. But I ended up in the studio, then decided I would record an album. I would record it on, because what I was writing about was predominantly male mental health, or mental health in general. I'd worked with a couple of girls that had eating disorders, and I understood it. I've always had a bit of a fluctuating head, nothing seriously wrong, but enough to know what somebody who has got stuff seriously wrong goes through, if that makes sense. I get highs and lows like everybody does. But I've learned to kind of work with them, and when you go through a low period, I tend to overthink. And when I go through a high period, I tend to produce very well. And if you can get the two things working together, then it's no longer a negative, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And over a period of time, like the caricature thing, you can almost work these two sides of your brain in tandem, where you can overthink and produce at the same time. And it's not, for anybody out there kind of wanting to start off, this game isn't about intellect and intelligence. It's about awareness. The more aware you are, the better you'll do. And the more active you are, the better you do. If you don't take the step, you'll never get there.
So see, when you talk about like sitting down with people who are in situations where, they've never thought about what they could do with 100 grand and all that. Is that one of the things that kind of keeps you going just now, doing what you do? Because obviously, so you started up quick sale property. Just explain a quick bit about what that does, and then we can talk about why you still do it.
It became a different thing. 2007, 2008, up to about 2010, nobody could sell property. So you were effectively taking the properties off the mainstream estate agents and you were punting them out the door quickly. Because, you had the experience to say to somebody, you're on the market at £100,000. You've been on the market for 6 months at £100,000. It is not worth £100,000. And it's that directness of, and they already know it's not worth £100,000 because it's been on the market for 6 months.
But no one's telling them that, or
correct. Nobody's telling them because they've not got the knowledge in order to tell them how to do it. The market will always find the value of a property. If you stick something that's worth 80 grand on at 100 grand, you won't get a viewer. If you stick it on offers over £1, you'll get 1 million viewers. And therein lies a lot of the skill in estate agency. How do you get people through the door? Nothing happens unless somebody chaps that door and walks through it. So I had that skill set to be just honest with people. Because estate agents, I don't know if you know this, estate agents get a bit of a reputation for being not honest.
Still sure.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of the reasons why we invited you on today, because I think that it's so refreshing talking to you, because you will tell the real story.
Yeah,
we'll talk about the market coming up, but
I was speaking to a big estate agent last week, and the conversation started with me saying, how's things? Great, never better. How's things with you, Davy? Shit, never been quieter. Right enough, we've only got 12 properties on.
Aye, exactly.
So why are we starting off with everything's brilliant? But that is the marketplace. And if you're straight and you're honest, people tend to know the information that you're going to tell them anyway. Sometimes you worry yourself sick about having to...
I've always got confused with that, because if an estate agent sits there and tells the seller that everything's great, and it'll be, you get a lot of estate agents get a bad name because they go in and they say your house is worth, say it was really worth 100 grand, they went in and said, I will get you 120 for it, because that's shooting themselves in the foot, isn't it? It's actually causing them more work in the end, do you know what I mean?
Well, it is, but then that's the estate agency model. You get on at 120 grand, then eventually you sell it for 90.
Aye.
Because basically you're trying to compete with another 5 or 6 estate agents that are saying your house is worth 100, it's worth 105, but somebody told us it's worth 120, so we're going to go with them.
So, initially you've got to be brave enough to be the one that doesn't get the property. But what happens...
It's like what you guys were doing, because you were being honest and saying, look, your property's not what they're telling you, it's not worth that much.
But if you play the long game, they sell the property eventually for 90 grand. The people that are selling it know they've been misled by the people, and they know that you told them the truth. So in the long 20-year, 30-year game, you're building your credibility. It takes a long, long time to build credibility, and it takes you a nanosecond to lose it.
You've mentioned before about changing things after a few years when it becomes work or boring or mundane, but quick sale's still going, and it's been, 16, 17 years?
Yeah.
Still love what you're doing, still love the business?
Yeah, it kind of constantly evolves. Quick sale, we should probably have changed the name 10 years ago.
And then change the back
when the market changed, because the quick sale thing does have a kind of quick save type connotation to it. It almost says kind of cheap.
Aye.
Bargain basement.
That person's going to be like, that guy's not going to get as much from a property as what it should be.
But then the radio adverts were going well at that point, and we were almost turning the whole quick sale thing into something quite cool, if you like. And I enjoyed that part of the process of taking the negative and kind of
making it a positive,
brand, and then you get to a stage where folk are shouting quick sale sold at you in the street. Like Edinburgh last week, there's guys on the other side of the street, bang bang, quick sale sold, shouting this whole thing.
I seen that one that was in there's a video of somebody in a car or something like that.
Somebody, TikTok thing,
somebody videoed you in your car. Aye.
I'm sitting at the traffic lights, so I look over, the phone's kind of out the window like that. Big man, I'm going to make you famous. I'm famous already, you dick.
That went viral, aye.
That's brilliant.
But we're in Edinburgh and folk are shouting quick sale sold, and my son's mortified. There's somebody standing beside him and he's like, your dad embarrass you? He's a pound shop celebrity.
If you're getting folks shouting that in Edinburgh, it's working anyway.
Everywhere now you get it. If you go abroad, you get it. And a lot of that's because I've got an odd look. I'm a big guy with a big long moustache and wearing eye makeup. People once have seen you once tend to remember you, which is a good thing as well.
Talk a wee bit then about the process, because obviously, like you talked to there about people are kind of sometimes a wee bit in a kind of different situations for selling their house quick. It might be debt. What's it? The 3 Ds: debt, divorce. Debt, divorce, and death. Do you find is that a lot of the situations you're dealing with? Do you sometimes have to really spend a lot of time with these people, because quite often they can be quite vulnerable?
Yep.
And to try and get a good outcome, do you offer them a cash? Would you buy the house for cash as well? Obviously. So where does it become a point where you're trying to give them the right advice? Have you ever come out of somebody's house and sort of said, look, I can't buy this house because it's just not the right thing. Like, how much, what I'm trying to say is, how much dictates your decision when you go in there? Are you looking to make money, or are you looking to help the person, or a bit of both?
I'm looking to do the right thing by the person, which sounds kind of, like I'm a saint. I'm not a saint. Whatever way that person goes, whether they want me to buy the property, or whether they want me to sell the property, or whether they want me to auction the property, I'll make money off them. And I can say that to people, whichever way you go, I will make money off you. I will tell you the route that's best for you.
And here's your options, yeah.
9 times out of 10, they want me to buy the property. 9 times out of 10, it's the wrong thing for them. And I always start with the premise that, my job here is to come out of this with you saying thanks, because that's how you build your reputation. There was one that happened recently that I got a phone call from a lawyer at 6 o'clock at night. I was sitting in the Aldi car park, and he was still in the office, and he phoned to say, Davy, I've got a client. They've had, I wouldn't mention their name, but a major high street brand out to see her property. And she's a bit of a sad story. And they've told her that they've had the home report done. They don't want to put it on the market because the home report was quite bad. But they know somebody who's willing to buy the property. They've offered the money to her, and the offer's on my desk, kind of thing. Got to pop your head in and just tell me whether it's a fair offer or not. So I phoned the woman from the Aldi car park, went straight to see her. It was bank holiday weekend. Got to see her to find out that her husband had died, and she was stuck in the house. She was registered blind. And she just didn't know what way to turn. She'd just had a shit time. And I looked at the house and said to her, if I was buying this house off you today, it would be 140 grand, and I would be spending 60 grand on it. It's 200 grand, I'd be selling it for 230, 240, I'd be making 30, 40,000 pounds out it. I said, the 100 grand offer, you shouldn't go anywhere near. She said, that's great, will you buy my house? I said, it's the wrong thing to do. She said, why would you not buy it? I said, I will buy it, but you'll make a whole lot more by me not buying it. And it was the weekend before the weekend the Queen died, actually. So I let her think about it overnight. She came back the next day and said, I've spoken to my daughter and we'd like you to buy the house. I said, well, thanks, but it's the wrong thing for you to do for the reasons that I've told you. Why don't you give me the house to sell? And if it isn't sold in a fortnight, then I'll buy your property off you. And it sold for 164 grand or something. And yeah, you can look at it and say, well, that cost me quite a lot of money. But you walk out happy. You know you've done the right thing. You know that she's going to tell lots of other people. Her daughter's going to tell lots of other people. Here I'm sitting in a podcast telling the story. And, good news takes longer to travel than bad news. But
Especially now with the internet.
But I tell you, people know who that estate agent was. That doesn't do them any favours. And the thing is, if you, and for all the people that are kind of listening to this podcast that are new into property, you really have to ask yourself, do you want to be the person that steals a little old lady's house? And a lot of them do. But then that's all they do is try and buy a property. If all you're doing is buying properties, obviously you're going to try and buy them as cheaply as you can get them.
You're privileged, I suppose, that you've got that secondary exit where you still bring it into your business.
Yeah,
and I've often thought about that as well. Like,
if I'm honest, 20 years ago, would I have been a different animal? Probably. I'd probably been a lot more ruthless.
Be like, here's a good opportunity here.
Yeah. I would like to think I would always have
given the option anyway.
Well, I mean, if I didn't have the option on the estate agency side, would I have nicked her house by saying I'll give you 105? Yeah.
I'm kind of listening to you, thinking to myself, what opportunity would I take? And I'd like to think I would have took the opportunity.
But you can sell it to yourself. You can say, well, she's getting $5,000 more than she was with them.
Yeah.
But the reality is, her money is transferring to you.
Yeah.
Now, it comes down to how badly do you need it?
Aye.
How badly do you want it? And there was a point in the middle of lockdown where, remember that point where you were conscious of the birds singing and there was no plane noise and no road noise and everything? You're like, what is this nature shit that's going on?
Deers were coming in your garden.
You were
and stuff like
getting
that.
deep within yourself.
I'm up walking the dog and kind of swimming in the river and thinking, this shit's for nothing. It's costs nothing. It's brilliant. And I remember thinking, what is it that we need the extra pound for? If somebody puts another £1 million in my bank account tomorrow, what fundamentally is going to change in my life? Nothing. So what is it we need it for? Why does the millionaire need to be the billionaire? Why does Jeff Bezos need to compete with
Elon Musk or
to be the richest guy in the world? What are you going to do with the money? And almost like everything else I've done, on the day and hour that I discovered how to make money, it ceased to be interesting to me. Well, let's go and record an album now, because you've only got one shot at life. You've only got one shot to run round the block. And I didn't really want to be one of these people that's super wealthy for being very singular in what they know. You know, they're expert in their own field. Because what happens in our society is you make a lot of money, like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. Because you've got a lot of money, people assume that you're like the most intelligent. You can't put your news app on just now without there being something about Elon Musk commenting on something he knows feck all about. But because he's Elon Musk, it's relevant. And our society tends to say the richer you are, the more respect you should be given. But it shouldn't. You should be given respect for your intelligence and your knowledge.
integrity.
And knowledge is breadth. You know, you got to expand your knowledge. So go learn French. Go write a poem. Go kind of help an old lady. Go work at a charity for a wee while. Go help somebody else and see how it makes you feel.
Is that? Do you think that's in retrospect after you've had a successful career where you've got to a position where you can have those thoughts? The younger ones starting out, are they going to have that same thought process? They're thinking, fuck, I need to build my own business and build my brand first.
I think the world's different. People are much more singular and selfish in the way they do things, and a lot of that's to do with they don't interact with each other in the same way that my age group did as kids. They don't play football in the street. They're in their bedrooms with their headphones on. They communicate with their pals online, and you see it when I coach rugby. Rugby's a game played behind you. You've got to pass the ball behind you. To pass the ball to somebody, you've got to shout, "I'm here." Kids can't. They're mute. Now, we grew up with popular music, popular television programmes. You know, if you're over the age of 40 and, you know, you sang the song, Hope It's Chips, everybody knows what advert that was, or P and Ham for a chicken, because everybody watched the same television channels. There was only 3 or 4 of them at that point. So your conversations would be based around what was on the television last night. You'd all be listening to the same music. A song will come on for the 80s on the radio that I absolutely hated, and I'll know every word of it. Because you all listen to the same stuff. It's why it's called pop. It doesn't exist anymore because everybody listens to their own individual music and watches their own individual videos and TVs and YouTube and whatnot.
1 hour is definitely not long enough for you, Davy Hutton. I've got to tell you, we need to do a part 2 of this. So, but we are coming to the end of our hour. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on the property market, what you're seeing at the moment, being out, speaking to sellers, speaking to buyers. What do you think's happening, and how do you think it's going to? This year's going to end up.
There's one thing I've learned as I've got older is never be scared to say you don't know. I have no idea what's going on just now. I've never seen anything like it. It's gone from bananas rising prices into stagnant just now. Nobody wants to sell their house because they're scared. And if they do want to sell the house, the buyers aren't there to buy it anymore all of a sudden, which is a really odd thing. You either get one thing or the other. You either get an undersupply of houses or you get an undersupply of buyers, but you've got an undersupply of both just now. And the worrying thing is I don't see how it changes. I don't see how, for instance, Brexit reverses itself. I don't see how inflation comes under control very quickly. But the property market is, it kind of runs on a fashion. Post-pandemic, prices are going through the roof. Joe Public then thinks prices are going through the roof.
Did you expect the pandemic? I mean, I know that myself and Nick spoke about in the podcast at the time, thinking, this is it, must be the crash, surely. Like, we're in a pandemic here.
Yeah, well, almost every prediction I made at that point was wrong.
Aye.
Because it didn't follow logic. But then, there's a great expression, you don't know what you don't know. And it makes it much easier to not be very definite in your opinions on things when you realise there's a lot of stuff you don't know. And you don't know it until you know it, if that makes sense. Like if you look at the schemes that the government brought in, I mean, did you think that they would be able to furlough? Had you ever heard the term? Did you think that the government would be able to come out and pay people's wages? So if you were following logic at that point, you'd be looking at it and saying, Italy's shut down, we're going to shut down. There's going to be bodies in the street. If they don't shut down, there's going to be bodies in the street, and then people are going to voluntarily lock down, and the businesses are going to fail, and people aren't going to be able to pay their rents. They're not going to be able to pay their mortgages. Hence, I'm buying gold. Now, I wasn't buying big amounts of gold. It wasn't like the big bullion robbery or anything like that. But bear in mind that not that long before we've been facing the possibility of the banks failing. And I don't think people really understand what happens when the banks fail.
You've just said there, that's where I fear that we've not actually paid the price for that yet.
No, we've not. And we've let the same things happen again, to a degree. Back to leverage. The banks are working on leverage. But where does it go? I don't think the prices are going to crash.
A crash in your mind would be something similar to 2008, like 20-30%.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the home report values now reflect the meteoric rise that happened in the last couple of years, so that the home report levels are at high levels. Joe Public still thinks that the property market's booming, and the property market has not been booming. The prices have been booming because of an undersupply of properties, an oversupply of buyers. But if I go and sell a house that's valued at 100 grand for 150 grand, that's a big headline. But it's one sale. You doesn't pay the wages for everybody if you're only selling one property. Is it a time to invest in property? Probably not right now. You've got the affordability index. I was trying to think about it yesterday, that you've got two different things happening in the market just now. The good areas are actually doing pretty well just now. The poorer areas are doing pretty badly just now. And it's because the good areas, the people wanting to buy in are not so mortgage dependent. They've got parents with money. Or it's somebody selling the big house and trading down to go and live in Shawlands. They're coming in with cash to buy the property in Shawlands because that's where they want to live, or the West End. It's not, the areas that are being killed are the ones where the people are starting off, first time buyers, without parental support. So if you were on the living wage, it's giving you 23, 24 grand. 6 months ago, you'd have got 4.5 times your salary on that for a mortgage. You'll now get 2.5 times. So that first rung in the ladder is broken. The second rung in the ladder is broken. But it takes a while for it to come round the monopoly board, if that makes sense. And you'll end up with a kind of two-tier society. The rich areas will get richer, the poor areas will get poorer, and then eventually you'll end up putting a fence round the good areas so as the poor people can't get in type thing. It's
brilliant. That was good analysis. Probably loads more questions that we've got for you, David, but we're going to need to wrap up here. So we've got another guest coming in, so we need to
see if I listen to it and you say your name was the first on our list right when we started doing it.
We've got another 4 lined up after you.
No, I appreciate you coming on, David. That was really good. And I think we should definitely get you back for a part 2. I really enjoyed this chat.
Always interested to watch your videos, because I love your videos when you talk about the politics, the market, the economy. So keep doing them; they're brilliant. Very honest take on stuff. And if you want to plug anything else while you're here,
it's not about plugging anything. You know, I have coffees with people all the time, starting off and kind of, you know, the advice that I give a lot of people in property starting off is don't be a dick. Don't go on a property course and then come out and think you're a property expert and
Trying to tell people.
part yourself as a guru and you've got your 12-figure investment portfolio pish, you know, but you live in your mom's back bedroom. Just don't do it. Be honest with people.
Aye.
You know, if that is your situation, go out there and say, I'm looking for my first breaking property. And people will think much more of you for that honesty. But if you start off with bullshit will follow you your whole career.
Excellent. We'll end on that. Thanks very much, Davy. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Cheers, Davey.